A man who has no confidence around women, a formula which can completely change a person, a comedic take on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. All this can only mean one thing. We're comparing the Nutty Professor on this episode of Retro vs. Remake.
I'm Reggie Parker.
And I'm Dan Bulick. Welcome to another episode of Retro vs. Remake. This is the series where we compare movies and their remakes. Join us as we answer the question, should this remake exist, today's films, or the Nutty Professor? Getting right into it, Nutty Professor was originally made in 1963, starring Jerry Lewis, Stella Stevens, who's actually an alumnus on the show. She was Mrs. Rogo in the original Poseidon Adventure. We have Del Moore, Kathleen Freeman, Howard Morris, and Elvira Allman. Directed by Jerry Lewis. Screenplay by Jerry Lewis and Jerry Richmond. And music by Walter Schaefer. The Nutty Professor, 1996. Starring Eddie Murphy, Jada Pinkett Smith, James Corbin, Larry Miller, Dave Chappelle, and Jason Ailes. Directed by Tom Shattuck. Screenplay by David Sheffield, Barry W. Bluestein, Tom Shattuck, and Stephen Oudkirk. Music by David Newman. All right, Reggie, what is your first experience with either film?
First experience with the original is for this podcast. Never took the time out to go see The Nutty Professor from 1963. So there's that. The 96 Nutty Professor, I was about 8 at the time, so like many 8-year-olds, which actually in retrospect maybe didn't make a lot of sense. I have seen the film. Honestly, I remember it more kind of in pop culture than actually watching the film. Like there were music videos and stuff associated with not just that one, but like the Nutty Professor 2 specifically. Some of the jokes that are in the film were kind of common jokes that people threw out, just in conversation. The Hercules line jumps out at me as one. But yeah, I have little memory of that film outside of this context as well.
Well, like you, I had never seen the original film until doing it for this podcast. I was sort of familiar with Jerry Lewis's portrayal just because, The Simpsons, Professor Frink. That portrayal is pretty much based on Professor Kelp. And he even does have sometimes a transformation into the Buddy Love character in The Simpsons. So I was familiar with the portrayal, but not really the whole plot and what actually happens in the original film. And as for the 1996 film, now I'm a little older than you, Reggie, so I had this on VHS and I watched it a lot. This was kind of the revival of Eddie's career, because I know he had a bunch of hits in the 80s, not so much in the 90s, and then Nutty Professor came out, and I watched this movie a lot on VHS. Bought it at the Wiz when we still had
nobody beats
stores.
the Wiz.
That's right. But I'd never seen the sequel, so I guess I didn't like it that much. I don't need to know what happens next.
Yeah,
so,
it was funny because I was talking to my wife about it, and she was like, "Yeah, it's the one with Janet Jackson." I'm like, "I'm pretty sure not this one," but she was in the same camp. She's like, "I've seen it so many times," and I'm like, "You saw the Nutty Professor too." Which I've already started the divorce papers.
Nice. All right, so let's get into it. Films are very similar when it comes to the plot. There's some major differences, but we'll get into that as we get into our discussion. So let's get into this synopsis. A professor at a university is brilliant, but when it comes to social standings, he is seen as a loser. People make fun of him all the time and walk all over him. He is also helplessly in love with Miss Purdy. He lacks any confidence to be with this woman, so he makes a formula to change himself and essentially get the girl. The formula is a success, and he takes on a new persona of Buddy Love. He has confidence, people like him, and most importantly, Miss Purdy finds him attractive. The formula isn't perfect, though, and he often finds himself turning back into the professor. Buddy Love goes out with Miss Purdy several times, often charming her and turning her off at the same time. Eventually, the professor decides he no longer needs Buddy Love and just decides to be himself. It pays off as Miss Purdy is still attracted to him, and the two presumably live happily ever after. The end. Well, except until you see the Nutty Professor 2, I guess. But when this movie was ending, that's kind of where you thought the remake was going. Anyways, so very similar plots. There are some major differences, but instead of focusing on those differences, I think we could focus on the characters, and that'll sort of lead us to these differences. So when we're talking about the Nutty Professor, I think our first character has to be the professor. In the original film, we have Jerry Lewis portraying Professor Julius F. Kelp, also Buddy Love.
Yes, as a matter of fact, now that you bring it up, the additive was specifically 3 parts carbon, 5 parts hydrogen, 1 part nitrogen, and 3 parts oxygen.
Eddie Murphy is portraying Professor Sherman Klump / Buddy Love.
Well, Daddy, all the calories in the chicken are found in the skin and in the fat, so I peel
Yeah, what
it
you
off.
talking about? That's where all the fats and calories is.
And Eddie Murphy plays several people in the movie, but I'm sure we'll get to that a little bit later. Okay, our professors. Should we start with Jerry Lee Lewis? Or, I knew I was going to say that. Jerry Lewis, not Jerry Lee Lewis, not the singer. Jerry Lewis, the Rat Packer. Should we start with Jerry?
Yeah, let's start with Jerry's portrayal. Let's see. Both films play with sort of the physical aspect of their professor in different ways, but what we're supposed to get from Jerry is, he's got the big sort of, not quite Coke bottle, but, close enough glasses. He's got this ridiculous overbite. And like I already did it, so I'm going to do it again. The way he talks is a lot like like you mentioned, Professor, was it Frank from from The Simpsons? So like you mentioned, I was immediately aware of what this character is. He's a nerdy guy that talks a lot like this, and he's very accident prone, as we learned very early in the film. That opening sequence reminds me a lot of the original The Fly, with just random doodads and chemicals and stuff like that. They're just different colors. But, he blows up a significant portion of the college and presumably his class, but we don't really worry about that, do we?
No. It's pretty impressive because he's able to blow up like the whole room. This huge explosion all over campus, chaos everywhere. The secretary like finds him, and it's a comedic effect. He's like underneath the door, like he's been like blown through the ground. He's just like, help me. So it's pretty comedic. It's this huge thing that's happened it's like the next day it's like the room's fine, there's no sign of an explosion at all, students are fine. So it's quite the introduction to this scientific clumsy fellow.
Yeah. And it's something that I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit as well, but like tonally this film kind of sets itself up right here to not be ultra realistic, like a lot of things that in other films, oh, this guy's dead. And he's just under the door. There's another scene later where like he's trying to lift something heavy and his arms are stretched out, kind of Space Jam style. I was like, okay, so that's what we're dealing with here. But the most important sort of characteristic for him here is just is sort of the accident prone nature, and that he's physically kind of weak. That's mostly what we're supposed to take away from. He's just socially awkward and physically weak. He also has a lot of strange tics, like the running gag with his watch.
Yeah,
I thought it was just
playing the Marines theme or something. It didn't really matter what song was playing there, but they brought enough attention to it where you're like, yeah, that was a thing that happened in that movie. Okay.
Yeah. And again, I do actually kind of like that unassuming comedy of this character, where like a lot of the jokes are coming from the fact that like, yeah, dude, you're not supposed to do that. Like you're getting sort of dressed down by the university sort of, I don't know, he's not quite the dean, but sort of, right? Like
we could just call him the dean because he's the dean in the remake, and so it's like when I went into this, I'm like, that guy's like a dean. So
Yeah.
and he's like answering to him. So he's not like another professor. He's somebody like above him. So
Right.
Let's just call him the dean, just for
Let's call him the
argument's sake.
dean.
Yeah,
Let's call him the dean. And there's a couple funny things about like whether he's gonna sit or not, and stuff like that. And that's where we first get this watch gag, and it's just like it's the exact wrong time to be acting the way that he is. And we also learn in that sort of interaction with the dean that Jerry Lewis is Dr. Kelp here. This isn't the first time that he's done this. This is the second time in 2 years that this has happened. And last time it happened, maybe the other guy didn't. Basically, without getting too deep into the joke, this has happened before, and he's kind of like in a way on his last rope. He's got to kind of shape up. Not that that really matters when you watch the film, but they try to make that apparent.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall, his portrayal is pretty much what you'd expect. Kind of this 60s nerd. He just does everything wrong, and nobody really likes him. And if you've seen The Simpsons, Professor Frink, it's exactly that. It's just this really dorky guy, but he's smart. The comedy, like you said, can get pretty cartoony. Him being under the door, his arms stretching out when he's trying to work out. So that stuff was okay. What I found the funniest, though, just getting back to when he's first in the dean's office, is those kind of moments of awkward silence when like nothing is really happening, but he's just so awkward around people that like even when no dialogue is happening, it's just funny. And I thought those were his strongest moments in the movie when it came to comedy. Not necessarily like him yucking it up as this dorky, brilliant guy, but just how socially awkward he can be. And he doesn't even have to say a word, and it's just so awkward.
Yeah, I found that those are the strongest moments. Like the things that are over the top cartoony, which I think were meant to be played to laughs, are less funny given the passage of time that we've
Yeah.
had. Versus like you're right, it's kind of like going back to that Professor Frink character, which is, it is a testament. It like took that sort of joke structure and like stretched it out over this entire series. So there's a lot to mine here, and like when someone else was talking, like it reminded me of Frank, where it's like, yeah, yes, yes, and like he's not saying anything, but like you mentioned, it is so awkward, and I do find that there's a lot of that makes this particular character funny to me in a way that I was actually surprised. I found some of the humor still kind of worked in the film, even given like no real reference point for me culturally at this point.
Yeah, like I had mentioned that scene when he first goes in the dean's office. There's this moment where he's kind of bullied by a student who looks older than him. I guess we'll get to the 40-year-old students in his class later, but he's pretty much jammed into a closet. And then this is sort of his first real interaction with Miss Purdy, and it's just him trying to get out of that
Yeah.
closet. Just the awkwardness of like, well, maybe if I move over here, and it's just. That works for me. I like that stuff, and that stuff really, I think it plays still really well today, as
Absolutely.
opposed to like you said, those cartoony moments were just like, all right.
Even that scene there, because this is actually one of the stronger jokes in the film. He's like kind of laid out in this next to all the jars and vials and stuff like that, and he's just like, class dismissed, because what else are you going to do? You can't get out. It is funny still.
All right, so let's get into Professor Sherman Klump, portrayed by Eddie Murphy, and he's also a bit dorky, maybe somewhat socially awkward, but his thing is that he is fat. That is his big shtick. He's just big guy, loves eating candy, and I don't know, he's just a fat guy, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. That is the character trait. I mean, he's a pretty sort of, I think the word's affable. He's a nice, kind of jovial guy. I think playing into a bit of a fat stereotype there. He's very motivated. Like when we first get introduced to the character, he's watching like a Richard Simmons esque parody, Luke Perkins, who may be played by the exact same character that we're talking about. And like he's very much aware of his size, and it bothers him. And we learn different aspects of him as we go along. But you're right, like the movie In the original, this guy's a big nerd and weak. In this one, the guy is a nerd, but that's kind of secondary, weirdly enough, to the fact that he's just fat. Like that's that's it. Like you mentioned, the hidden shelf of candy and stuff like that. Not the protein, but the weight loss shakes. This is you hammer that home several times that he is larger than he wants to be.
Yeah, he's a big guy. He knows he's a big guy. Other people know he's a big guy. It's something that's definitely like hanging over him, but he's not necessarily. He hasn't taken really any steps to do anything about it. He eventually does take some steps before he comes up with that formula.
Sure.
But yeah, so this is something kind of in his head that not quite dealing with yet.
Yeah, and what's interesting about it is that although he has this sort of this weakness, actually compared to the other, Dr. Klump, compared to Dr. Kelp, he actually like socially is enough in the game though. Like he still does things that Dr. Kelp could never do. Like he couldn't actually ask someone out as Dr. Kelp. Dr. Klump can, it's just that he's gonna hit certain roadblocks as it goes along. So I thought that was an interesting approach. Marginally, I don't think it's that interesting, but it's good to see this guy have motivation and think that he can solve his problems without the formula versus the original where that was never even. Well, I guess he went to the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess let's shelf that. But I'll say not necessarily solving the problems, but like this character can talk to the love interest without extra assistance. We'll put it that way. That's the key takeaway.
Yeah, he's able to ask her out and actually get a yes from her, even though he kind of awkwardly stalks her to get her address through the school records. He's also not sort of hated by the students. The students generally seem to like him. Any interactions we see as pretty much one of mutual respect. Like they respect him, he respects them. Students never really insult him. They might laugh if he like does something stupid, like he's erasing what he wrote because of the size of his belly. So they'll kind of laugh at that, but they're not like ripping on him the whole time. When one student sees him out on the date, he's like, "All right, professor." He's not like ripping on her or ripping on him. So they very much respect him, and yeah, he is able to kind of just fit in society despite his size, which is supposed to be like just ginormous, but he's really not that big, especially by today's standards. So he is much more well adjusted than Professor Kelp is. Absolutely.
Yeah. To the point, I think talking about the students actually is interesting here because basically in the original, like students are like, you could not imagine Kelp in a social setting. Like he would never be at the pit, as it were, the purple pit.
The purple pit.
So like that's kind of a running gag amongst some of the students, and to your point, who are actually bullies, to the point where like literally a student, I forget his name, is like Wazinski or Wachowski, something like that, but just literally in the middle of class just throws him into that closet. Like you mentioned, you will not see this for Professor Klump. In fact, even some students, like you mentioned, the guy that sees him out, and also some of the students work with him. He's got like this assistant character who I pegged as a student. Maybe he wasn't, but that was how I interpreted that character.
Right.
So, though they both have their issues, I don't think they're necessarily coming from the same place. And honestly, Kelp to me feels like his thing is more reactionary to the fact that he was bullied versus Klump, who really like, there's not anyone trying to tell him to change. He just wants to change himself. So I think there's, again, minor details here, minor distinctions, but when the characters are so closely sort of resembling each other, it's important to note these small changes.
Yeah, definitely. I want to touch on something you had sort of mentioned before, and that's how they kind of tried to improve themselves without going to the formula. Mm-hmm. So you'd mentioned that Professor Kelp, in an effort to sort of stand up to these bullies, first I guess he sees an ad in a magazine about like going to the gym, become from like a small person to this huge person. So it's like he never had that idea until he read it in a magazine. Sure.
Yeah.
So he goes to the gym, and like you said, there's a lot of comedic things happens. Like he lifts weights, and that's when his arms like stretch like a cartoon character, and they double down on that joke by actually showing him in bed later with his arms like scratching his toes while he's sleeping at night. So not much success there, but it is nice to see that he did make an effort in order to improve himself, and I guess get the confidence to get the girl. But even though that ultimately goes nowhere, I'd say Professor Klump has a little more success in his endeavors, because he just gets inspired to exercise, and that's pretty much it. He gets inspired to exercise as well, and at first, like, it's this montage to, oh, I'm so excited, very cliche. But he's struggling through everything. He can't do the trampoline, he can't do the steps, he can't do the punching bag or anything, and you see him struggle. But then by the end of the montage, he's able to do everything that everybody else is working at. So it almost seems like, well, there's the movie right there. He had this struggle, he's able to overcome it, so why are we even having a film here? So he has so much success, you're almost just like, do we even need the formula at this point?
Yeah. Well, we do, because, there's no parallel, so it's fine to talk about this. The date as the Professor Klump, not as Buddy Love. Like, again, there is no equivalent to this in the original film, so I think we're fine to talk about it. Klump is going on this date, and it's actually going well. Montel Jordan's there, singing "This Is How We Do It." By the way, this is a great '90s date.
Yeah, seriously, bringing your date to see Montel in the late '90s, it's pretty good, man.
Yeah. Instead of the Purple Pit, it's the Scream. Whatever.
Sure.
But when it's Montel's off, of course you're gonna have a Def Jam style comedian played by Dave Chappelle, Reggie Warrington.
So wait, you're telling me there's a stand-up named Reggie in this movie? Is that what you're saying, Reggie?
Exactly. And wouldn't you know, just like all Reggie stand-ups, the guy's an asshole. This that scene is probably, out of everything from the film, that I actually like recall. One, because it is one of the funnier scenes in the film, but also it's just so damn mean. You feel so bad for the guy, because you just had this great montage, like you mentioned. He's running up the stairs like Rocky. He's like, just because he's bigger doesn't mean he can't do everything else that everyone else does. And he gets there, and this guy's just being just brutally awful to him. And you can understand why Klump has this reservation to be himself, because he's just getting, the guy's doing fat jokes for like 5 minutes straight in the set. He's embarrassed in front of the date. Everyone's got their heads down. It's just like, it's rough. But women be shopping though.
You cannot stop a woman from shopping. I'm sure we'll talk more about Dave Chappelle and his amazing performance later.
Oh,
but
yes.
I want to touch upon that. Yeah, that's a really powerful scene, I think, in this comedy, because it really does make you feel terrible for Sherman. It's just like, damn, he really did try to kind of turn his life around, and he built up the confidence to ask her out, and then just to be humiliated like that in front of all these people. And it's just like, it's not enough that somebody's just like humiliating you, but like to have a whole room full of people just like laughing at your expense, it could be pretty brutal. And then you got the somber music playing, got the slow zoom and Eddie Murphy's face, and you really feel for him at that moment. And Miss Purdy tries to, don't think about that, Sherman, don't worry about that, you're still brilliant. But it's, how can that not affect you, just being humiliated like that? So it's great that the remake has that, because there's not really a moment like that per se in the original where he's like sort of at the lowest point, where he's like, that's it, I need to do something drastic in order to overcome this just me, because I'm just not good enough right now.
I just find that tonally, because it is a tone shift for the film completely, to get into this sort of somber moment. I really really can't think of any moment in the original where it was like sad. You know, there was some hurdles to overcome and stuff, but like, yeah, guys getting made fun of. Like you said, the music notes come on, they zoom in on his face. It's raining afterwards. You know, like they really lean into this low moment, and I think that scene is necessary for this film because of how brilliant Professor Klump is. There's no real reason for Sherman to take this potion, you know, especially after that montage. But now there is. I mean, you just got humiliated. Like, you know, no matter what you do, nothing's going to change. So, you know what, let's take the experimental drugs that we were giving the hamsters, which I guess we didn't really talk about that, but in the original film, excuse me, in the remake, instead of blowing up the building, there's like a hamster escape with CGI abound. It's pretty funny, but it's also like gratuitous. But yeah, but you know, going back to it though, we have this motivation that I think serves this film very well.
Yeah, I'm just on top of that too. So he doesn't just get humiliated; he also goes home and he does have a couple nightmares too, which which add a little bit of levity to that pretty depressing kind of moment he has. So he has this kind of fantasy where he's just like in the hospital. He just keeps getting fatter, and he just grows up to like this King Kong, or is it like the King Kong with titties? What Reggie said in the movie. Oh man, it's pretty ridiculous and over the top, and then it ends with this nuclear type of explosion because he farts and somebody lights a match. Yeah, so
light their cigarette.
It's pretty comedic, you know, and I think I appreciate that kind of humor there. It was a nice balance because you just had this really low moment for Sherman just to bring just some levity. Like you know, we could have a little fun with this. You know, we brought in the serious moment here, but let's lighten it up a little bit because at the end of the day, this is a comedy. So I appreciated that.
Absolutely. Should we talk about the Buddy Love character, or you know, there's a space in here for both films to kind of talk about their background and how they kind of got to this place, but I don't know if this is necessarily the time to discuss that.
You could, if you want.
No.
What do you mean?
In the sense that in the original film, we have this sort of baby kelp, this ridiculous character, by the way, just Jerry Lewis, basically on his knees in a.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
In the I don't even know what you call it, in a crib. Let's just put it this way. And you see that where he comes from, the reason that Dr. Kelp is like this, is his dad's a pushover. His mother was a very strong woman who basically like ran the household, and his father was weak and was just like a complete pushover. You know, a yes dear type of guy. You know, she hits him, he doesn't hit back. Very strange. You know, sort of intro, but like, okay, I get it. He's a weakling because his dad's a weakling. And for him, that was the realization that like, okay, I've gone to the gym for 6 weeks or something like that. And his doctor or something saying, no, it doesn't take for everybody. Some people can lift and they're not going to get bigger. And he's like, genetics. Okay. So, you know, read a book on genetics. Next thing you know, you're making formulas for it. The way they do that similar thing in the remake is actually one of the stronger points in the remake, which is this really like technical and elaborate setup of having Eddie Murphy play multiple characters. Something that we'll go into, but you know, the important thing here is that you see his family dynamic as well. He's very family oriented, but like they meet around the dinner table and they eat a lot. And you know, the cool thing about his family is they're not worried about their appearance. They're like, nah, man. You know, some people are small, some people are big. What are you gonna do? I just thought that it was good to note that background is part of some of their motivation as well, of seeing how they see themselves based off of their own family interactions.
Yeah, I'd say it has maybe more of an impact in the original film, just because there is no scene in that original film where he's like kind of humiliated just because of who he is. So, and in the remake, it's just so fun, the scene with the family. And there's not really, I mean, there's one tender moment when he's outside with his mom, like after dinner, when she's like, just be yourself, Sherman. Don't worry about what other people are thinking all the time. So there's a little bit of a tender moment there, but I don't really see that as the driving force so much as him getting humiliated in the remake.
Yeah, yeah. I would 100% agree with that. That the humiliation is a motivation. Versus the original, being like his dad, I guess, is a bit of motivation. Is actually just good background, honestly. But getting stuffed in cabinets and stuff like that seems to be a motivation. And for him, especially, like the love interest is more of a motivation because there's just no way for Dr. Kelp to do that himself.
Mm-hmm.
Versus Klump could, but he's kind of beaten down even after he put himself out there.
It's true. Is it time for Buddy Love?
I think it's time for Buddy Love.
All right, so the characters both turned to Buddy Love. They kept that name the same.
Hey, baby, take this, wipe the lipstick off, slide over here next to me, and let's get started.
You almost killed me, man. I had to give myself the Hamlet.
I guess we'll start with the original again. And I'm going to start kind of at the transformation because It is very misleading what happens. It said in the description this is very much inspired by Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and I think they took a lot of inspiration in that during the transformation scene because Jerry goes through some shit. He gets hairy arms, his face changes many different colors that are not human. So he very much looks like a monster. And I think they were playing with expectations because people were familiar with the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing. So I think they wanted you to think, oh, he's going to be hideous, he's going to look like a monster. And then it just, pays off, I guess, when he comes out looking sort of suave, like a member of the Rat Pack later.
Yeah. What I found interesting about it was, like you mentioned, more of just the marketing, I guess, for the film at the time. Obviously there's no internet. There's 3 TV channels maybe at this point. So this reveal is important. And even in the marketing, they say, hey, if you see the film, don't tell people what happens because that's the entire hook. So don't ruin it for us. But yeah, they play with expectations so much because you see him, like you mentioned, he's hairy and purple and blue and
I think he gets fangs at one point too.
I think so.
Damn.
The whole thing is crazy. And I kind of love the shot of we haven't revealed him yet, but he's going through town. Everyone's like, oh, jeez. Oh yeah. And they really are playing with this idea of a monster. What are these people seeing as he walks by? And for him to just be Jerry Lewis in a cool suit with a cigarette, slick back hair. It's fun little misdirection there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I really like that kind of first-person shot where he's just walking through town and then he walks into the club and everybody immediately stops what they're doing just to look at him and you're like, whoa. It really does capture your imaginations to what really happened there, especially if you haven't seen that before. So it's a really fun thing that they do there. Really appreciate that. And they don't really do anything like that so much in the remake. So this takes place in the 90s, the late 90s, when we're kind of messing with the CG and everything. And that comes in a full swing. Not so much during the first transformation, but we definitely see it later. And we just see the reduction of his size, really. And then Eddie Murphy just has this I feel good montage where he just gotta try on spandex, all spandex.
Yeah, yep. I'm wondering whose idea that was. I don't know if Eddie Murphy gets a screenplay credit in this one, but it feels very, very performative. Let's just put it this way. But it's fun. It's a fun kind of. It's a completely different energy. In terms of the reaction. Buddy Love in the original is basically fully encompassed. That character is more or less a standalone character. Yes, he does come from Dr. Kelp, but he's just operating his own entity. He has no real reaction to now being smooth. Whereas in for Sherman Klump, no, this is huge. His face is different. You can see his cheekbones. You mentioned the spandex thing. there is some clumpness, I guess, to this buddy love, but it's just like I don't know, like in some ways it's less apparent that like Sherman's not involved in this. Like, it feels like is he leaning into this? Like, how much of this character is him? How much of this is Buddy Love? And that's something they have to kind of grapple with throughout the film. But just a completely different energy. I mean, just like that upbeat. This is great. Like, imagine if you changed everything about yourself. What would you do? It feels a lot like that versus just fully being that person.
Yeah. Because I guess, because in the original, it was mostly just like he didn't have any confidence, he didn't really know how to talk, and then all of a sudden he's this smooth talking, let me tell you how to make me a proper drink kind of guy, and I'm going to go to the piano like I'm Dean Martin over here, and, he's just doing that stuff. And the first thing Sherman Klump does is like, he kind of just like leans into like, well, this is, now I'm going to wear the spandex, now I'm going to eat whatever I want. Now I'm gonna just yell I'm thin, like an animal on the top of towers. So, I mean, they definitely seem to like really just love that they're kind of the opposite that they use of what they used to be, and they're leaning into that very heavily. Professor Kelp, though, in the original, I guess he goes right to that club, and he's able to find his love interest right away, as opposed to Buddy Love in the remake, where it's not necessarily about her right away. It's more like, I'm just as a celebration of myself right now, and we'll meet eventually, but right now I'm just gonna enjoy the fact that I'm this thin and I can do whatever I want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Versus, Buddy Love in the original is pretty similarly minded here. He'll stop for an Alaskan polar bear heater, and he'll make fun of you, and knock over your drink and beat up some random guy.
Why? Sure.
Yeah, and then just take a table of three toughs and be like, hey, why don't you kids go do something else? Because me and the lady got some business to do. And then he'll just like, he'll sing that old Black Magic or whatever. Another kick in the head or whatever the hell.
Might as well, right?
I mean, seriously. I like how kind of like I said, we get that first person montage. I like how kind of like cool he is. That like people actually, I mean, he is still a dick. Like we'll see is very consistent with the Buddy Love characters. But like, hey, he's pretty cool. I mean, like this guy, like he lights up a room. He'll play a song. He'll put the girl in his arms like, hey, we're out of here, and you're driving. And consent is something that this Buddy Love needs to work on. But other than that, he's a pretty cool character, but he's like obnoxiously self-obsessed. Eddie Murphy's Buddy Love does kind of the same thing by the time he does get to the date, sort of. But like, I don't know. I didn't get that same initial like, this guy's so cool vibe. Like you mentioned, it was more about like just being free to do whatever he wants because he got skinny all of a sudden. And there was also this kind of strange sort of back and forth where this is not in the original at all, where like Buddy Love is interacting with the love interest about Sherman, and Sherman's talking to her about Buddy Love. And it's a different dynamic that I think it works for the film, but like again, it makes you question like how much of this is Buddy Love, how much of this is Sherman, and I just remember I'd never felt like that while watching the original.
Well, okay, so the original, it's mostly about like this dorky guy becoming cool, while the remake is about pretty much a fat guy just becoming thin. I feel like, a 60s movie, it's portraying cool is always difficult in any movie, especially an old 60s movie. So I feel like
And Spider-Man 3.
Spider-Man 3, thank you. Just like portraying like, well, this is one cool guy. That's a hard task to pull off, especially in the 60s movie, because it's I didn't really think he was that cool. Like, sure, he could talk a little bit smoother. Still very much a jerk. I didn't think like he looked good. I thought that suit was ridiculous. It was like some sky blue affair. I don't know what was going on there.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, maybe people are just looking at him because they're like, who fucking wear that? That's a weird looking suit, dude. So it's harder to really portray cool and just to have that kind of work today. But it's easy for like to go, okay, this guy's a fat guy and now he's thin. That's simple, and you can't really deny that we weren't able to pull that off because here he is fat and here he is thin. So I feel like it was just maybe the overall, I guess, the transformation of Professor Kelp versus Professor Klump. I think it works a little bit better in the remake, like for me, just because it's just easier to portray those contrasts as opposed to like, this guy's a dork and now he's cool. It felt a little rough in the original film for me, just because it doesn't necessarily translate as well today.
Yeah, and I think also that the Buddy Love in the original just early on really leans into being a jerk. Yeah. I mean, he's rude to the bartender, he's rude to the waitress, he's rude to random passersby, he's rude to the love interest. He says one kind of nice thing, then he's a dick to her again, and then she drives him out in the middle of the woods, to make out point. He's like, hey, you're gonna lay one on me, and she's like, I don't think so, I don't know. He's like, yeah, dummy.
He just wipe the lipstick off and let's get to it, dollface.
Let's get going.
Which I guess is funny. I mean, I was just like, wow, that guy's really a dick. Like, I was just so taken aback by just how much of a dick he was. Like, I didn't really find the humor that I guess they were going for.
Right. I found that the more humorous moments with Buddy were interacting with different people. I just especially by today's standards, his behavior towards the love interest is pretty much just gross.
It doesn't work today. You can't treat a woman like that, even no matter how cool you're trying to act, man. It's like, I don't know, not comfortable.
And I mean, even the movie itself basically portrays it like you couldn't treat a woman like that then either. Like, he's taking it a little too far. There's a scene that I'll love to talk about later, but like his interaction with the dean is
that was a little funnier.
That's fun, but we'll bring that up as we talk about that character. In the remake, with Buddy, he kind of like sets up his own date with the love interest, like from the college, which is a little bit different. Like, he's in there messing around with some of the chemicals or potions, whatever you want to call it. He's like, who are you? Oh, I'm friends with Sherman, Buddy. Okay, I'm Buddy Love. I found that like when he went to the screen with her, and there was almost like this do-over scene with Reggie Warrington. Even though he's a dick, same way he's late and he's brash. Like, because Reggie Warrington was such a villain, a few scenes earlier, like, it hasn't really sunk into me how much of a jerk he is, because like this felt like proper retribution. Reggie Warrington was a cruel guy, so like taking his energy towards him felt like okay versus like putting it towards the love interest in the original film. So I thought that was cool enough for the intro to Buddy Love. Like, I felt like he started off as a more empathetic and caring character that just devolved into something, worse as time went on.
Yeah.
Whereas in the original, he's just a jerk the whole time.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Buddy's sort of beginnings, like, he's very sort of useful to sort of Sherman's goals, like where Sherman was unable to really defend himself against Reggie. Well, Buddy Love is not the same guy. You're not going to do that to Buddy. Buddy's going to come at you. So when Buddy Love comes back at Reggie and he hits him hard, like literally too, you're just cheering for him because you hated what you saw happen to Sherman, and just to see it like turned around and just getting like full out like just revenge, retribution, whatever, just for, and you feel like he's doing it for Sherman. So Buddy Love is nothing but a good thing in Sherman's life. He's helping him with this one night that was like one of the lowest points in his whole life, and just helped flip that whole thing around. And then he's also, charming to the girl. The girl really likes him. So everything's coming up net positive in
Right.
Buddy's first kind of outing. And it's not necessarily true for Buddy's first outing in the original because he is so overly aggressive and demeaning to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So it's definitely the slow burn works really well in the remake as opposed to the original where he's just like, well, he's a dick right off the bat.
Yeah, yeah. It's like in that original, it's like the dick with some gleaming like shining moments. They're few and far between, but they're strong enough. Like ultimately he does have the heart of kelp, somewhere deep in there. Versus like Buddy Love is in the remake is quite literally taking over, sort of. Like it is more Jekyll and Hyde like in that way in this remake, and like I said, it's disarming at first because like, oh, this guy's just wearing spandex and he's having fun, and he got the guy that was being mean to him, but then he takes it farther, and like you mentioned, not in his first interaction, but as we see more of him, there's a lot less to like.
Yeah. That's something that the remake also has, and that's stakes, right? Buddy's becoming more aggressive. He's becoming more of sort of a threat to Sherman's life instead of positive things happening because of Buddy. Now more negative things are happening. He's going to lose his job. He's going to lose where he lives. He's going to lose the girl. And like you said, he's slowly going to become Buddy. There's not going to be any more Sherman anymore.
Right.
So that's something the original doesn't have. There's never the threat of Buddy Love just completely getting rid of Professor Kelp. So I think that was a pretty smart move on the remake too, just to have those stakes. There is also more stakes we'll get to as we talk about other characters, but yeah, just the threat of, well, your main character he's not going to be in here anymore because he took the formula. So I really like that in the remake.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that there's certainly more to explore with both these characters, but as we're fleshing out some of these other characters in the film, I think we'll have a better pathway to fully discuss the Buddy Love versus our mild-mannered characters, that transition. So I don't know about you. Do you think it's a good idea to talk about the love interest?
Yeah, let's go there. That'll help us flesh out because I'm sure that we got plenty more to talk about with Buddy Love and the professors. All right, so we have Miss Purty and Purdy. I'm just gonna kind of say Purdy, and just they're like the same character. So Stella Stevens portrays Stella Purdy in the original.
Well, mister, this is one kitten that won't be smitten by that little old devil. So you can just turn this car right around and take me right back where you picked me up.
And then Jada Pinkett Smith plays Carla Purdy in the remake.
I hate this guy. He's so obnoxious.
I don't know. I guess maybe start with the original again. Just talk about Stella. Just a different sort of professional relationship that they have to the professor in general, because our Purdy in the I'll start with Carla. Carla is a fellow colleague. She's a new professor at the university. She teaches biology down the halls. Biology. Oh, very important. Teaching biology.
Chemistry.
Oh, is it chemistry?
Chemistry.
Okay, my bad. And
it doesn't matter.
as opposed to Stella Purdy, who is a student.
Yep. Just his student.
Just his student. So right off the bat, it's like, ooh, okay. Yep. So I'll just start by saying good change in the remake. Let's not make her a student. That's very good.
Yep. Yeah, giving her like a direct, this direct power dynamic. That again, we're so attuned to these days that
right.
Yeah, I mean, like he's grading her papers, he's granting her exceptions. Like she literally like falls asleep during the test. He's like, well, Miss Purdy, just whatever you want. And it's just like, yeah, I wish it wasn't his student. She even throws out the line towards the end about being like a professor's wife, and it's like that. Tough when you're still the student.
Yeah, it just reminds me of like when we did Mulan, we were talking about how like she had a relationship with like the general in the original, and then they kind of got rid of that in the remake. So it's really not good when you have that weird power dynamic in these original films.
Yeah, and in many ways, and again, honestly, Sherman Klump's hang-ups are mostly his own. I mean, outside of yes, is he still absent-minded and accident-prone? Sure. Um, it doesn't stop him from going on this original date, and although the date didn't go according to plan, I'm sure she would have gone out with him again. I mean, she ultimately was like, that comedian's a jerk, not you.
Mm-hmm.
And making her a colleague makes sense because she respects his work. You know,
Right.
there's no, like you mentioned, taking the power dynamic out was great because we're not worried about any other motivation here. But like, yeah, like she just respects his mind very early on in a way that even he hasn't come to grips with in himself. So uh, that power dynamic, I think, is a good change. But if you're asking me to call this one straight up, these might be two of the weakest characters that I've seen in film. There, there's just not much. Even with Carla, like there's not much there. She's not much of an improvement from Stella, in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe you've got a different take on it.
I mean, when you say it like that, I'm trying to think if she really does anything to really contribute, but no, she's just sort of just that love interest. That's just sort of part of this weird, bizarre love triangle, and other than just making her a colleague in the remake, I don't really think they did much to really give her like any more like any agency or anything.
Yeah.
She just sort of helpless to buddy love in both films, and yeah, I don't really remember her doing anything too memorable.
I mean, like when you look at Stella, okay, you know, whatever. She's along for the ride, but like it kind of makes a little bit more sense. Like this buddy comes in, he just kind of sweeps up the whole town, as it were, in his wake. And I would say he's a little bit more like aggressive, obviously, this buddy love, especially early on. But you know, she gives about the same amount of pushback as Purdy does Carla in this remake, and with a completely different power dynamic. Like she's like, "Hey, buddy, we're moving too fast." And he's like, "Hey, sorry," and then, "Okay, we're moving too fast again." Or, "I wish you didn't do this. I kind of wish I saw more of the sweet guy." For Carla, I mean, there's not much different. I mean, other than I guess Sherman vouches for Buddy, kind of, you know, like because ultimately he knows, or he thinks that she wants Buddy and not him, so he's pushing her in that direction. But like, it's the exact same note. It's like, you know, yeah, he's attractive, but he's kind of a jerk, and you know, he has a familiar face, but you know, I just wish he would moving on that sweet side, like even with extra scenes, even with her meeting the family and all that other stuff, she's about as one note as Stella is in this original, and I just felt like it's such a drop ball right there. Like, how did that happen?
I mean, it's it's Eddie's show.
It is the Eddie show.
At the end of the day,
it is the Eddie show. Everywhere.
So, especially you put her in that dinner scene. It's with all Eddie. You're not gonna remember anything she did. You're just gonna remember all the silly shit that Eddie did. So, yeah, because all her scenes are with Eddie, and he's the more memorable of the two of them. She's never like by herself or like with anybody, just like expressing her feelings or doing anything really. So when it's her and Eddie, you're gonna watch Eddie the whole time because he's just so dynamic in this movie.
I mean, you know, she's relegated to basically the same task of like, we're gonna zoom in on her face and watch her react to to things Eddie is doing, in multiple ways. By the way, like we mentioned, like in the dinner scene, she's just like, "Oh my god," you know, like she doesn't really say much other than where she's from.
Yeah.
And you know, it's awkward, and they start talking about relations and all that stuff, and she doesn't really push back very hard in any way. You know,
and she almost has a moment that's pretty strong in the remake. Almost. There's the point where like Buddy wants to like have like a 4-way with her and these 3 other girls at the hotel, and then she's like, "No, forget you." And then she goes to Sherman and then sees the same 3 girls with Sherman. And she's like, "Well, forget you." And
Right.
then you think, like, well, what's she going to do now? But then she, like, immediately forgives Sherman when she sees the mom at the dinner. So it's like, that was kind of drama that didn't really get resolved properly or even go anywhere. We didn't
Yeah.
need her to be mad at Sherman or even Buddy at that point. It's just, it's kind of
Yeah,
useless.
you're right. It's one of those things like, not that this isn't really a rom-com, but it's like one of those things in a rom-com where there's always this flimsy, stupid reason why it's all falling apart before it has to resolve itself. It's like, oh, you forgot the song I like or something, and then the next scene the guy's playing the song. Like it's ridiculous. But yeah, this is very much like this where she doesn't really ask any questions. She's just like, oh, there's women, and I have no reason to believe that this is who you are, but I immediately believe it. And then and then to follow that up with, like you said, the mom scene. And mom's like, he wouldn't do that. She's like, yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah. It's like, at least let Sherman resolve it somehow. I mean, he kind of does because he reveals that he is him and Buddy, but he never really, like,
He
I
doesn't
don't
really
think he does
apologize.
anything. Yeah, he doesn't really apologize, exactly. So
It's not. I mean, he apologized, but not really directly to her in a meaningful way. And I found like they really let him off the hook.
Yeah, I feel like, if you were pretending to be somebody else and making somebody fall in love with that person, you'd have to work really hard to earn that person's trust back. No? Is that just me?
It's not just you. I thought that they sort of they missed the mark there in some of the resolution there. I'll say the same thing in many ways about the original as well. That I don't. Well, yeah, especially in the original, I don't think they learned their lesson based off of what we see at the end. But that's,
no, not at all. Just be yourself. Nope. No, you don't.
Nope. And she's like, "Oh, I want you to be yourself." And again, we'll discuss why that's not necessarily the case.
But I guess, I mean, she's not the greatest character, but just getting rid of that power dynamic,
Yes.
I like that. So I'll lean towards Jada Pinkett's portrayal.
I 100% agree.
Plus, like, I get, like, Stella in like, the original, she's like, I'm not really attracted to him because he's a jerk. I'm just so fascinated by, like, him. And it's like, I didn't really buy that so much that she, like, I need to know who he is because who acts like that? That's so interesting to me. It's like, is it? He's just an asshole. What's interesting about that? Their motivation was weak for me.
It is very weak. And there was one scene. I'm trying to remember the context. I think it was actually Dr. Kelp himself, like in an interaction with her, and he's just like, well, I gotta leave. And she just like looks directly at the camera and delivers this line. I feel like the girl on her wedding night where her absent-minded husband goes to his mother's for dinner. And I just didn't get that. I didn't get why she was looking at the camera. Was that supposed to be funny? But it kept her on pace with lines with Carla. What you got Jada Pinkett. You got her right here. Like, she's a great actress. Like, what are we doing? But, look, to your point, she does her job, right? The power dynamic's gone. She moves the movie along. There is tension there. She does react somewhat properly at certain times in the film. And you're right. It's more believable from her, even though she's a very, just like, not fleshed out character. It's more believable than this girl who's like, he's a jerk, but, there's something else under this jerk. It's like, no, there's not. Guy's a dick.
Actually, just want to talk a little bit about the Buddy characters, just because you had mentioned something, and it just reminded me of something. Something both of these actors do pretty well is a lot of times Buddy is kind of reverting back to the professor, so they have to do these, their changes in the voice, and they do an excellent job, both actors here, just getting back to the signature professor and then just getting back to their regular voice. And I think Jerry probably has to do a little more heavy lifting because I don't think he really talks like Buddy Love or the Professor Kelp at all. So he's probably somewhere like his real voice is probably in the middle. Because like
Yeah.
when Eddie becomes Buddy Love, that's just like Eddie.
Yeah,
I don't really think that. I mean, he's a little louder maybe, but he's pretty much just sounding like Eddie, as opposed to like when Jerry has to become Buddy Love. He has to like put on this kind of Dean Martin thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's good on him for just being able to really go back and forth like flawlessly between those two different voices. You know, Eddie does a great job too, but I just wanted to address that both of these actors did a great job at that.
Yeah, when it comes to that transformation, I think Eddie gets a lot of help, like you mentioned, from the CGI and stuff like that. There's physically things change about him, whereas like for Jerry, like you mentioned, it's basically just his voice. Nothing else changes. I guess technically he can't see as well, so you get the blurry camera effect from time to time. But like he's in the middle of the song and it's like, ain't that black magic? you know, it's like.
Well, yeah, just give me a second.
Well, I'm gonna have to leave now. He's great. He's actually, you're right. That's a lot of fun. And Eddie, like to your point, it's just the Sherman Klump voice is a little bit deeper in the register. Yeah, but there's not much else to it. But like not saying it's a bad job, but I'm putting the lean in when it comes to transformation towards Jerry, to your point, because he's doing characters.
Right.
Whereas Eddie, like you mentioned, Eddie is just, hey, what's up, everybody? It's fun. I like it, but Jerry's got it.
I'll also give it to Jerry in the original. He has the best reaction when his first transformation back to Professor Kelp. He's like, oh shit, I'm turning back to the professor. He just jumps off a goddamn cliff. Yeah. I didn't see that coming. I was just laughing my ass off when he did that. I was like, well, gotta go. Just like, oh, shit, man.
It's so funny. It's
so
funny. He's just like,
so there's definitely moments that work in that original film for sure.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of moments. And one that we were talking about, so I guess this would be a good time to talk about the deans, the doctors, whatever you want to call them, because one of the strongest scenes involves him.
Mm-hmm. So we have our doctor/dean, Del Moore portrays Dr. Mortimer S. Warfield in the original.
Kelp, it's human nature. Kelp, people just don't like teachers blowing up their kids.
And then we have Larry Miller as Dean Richmond in the remake.
Where the hell have you been? I've been nursemaiding Hartley for 3 hours, and if I didn't need that money... Shut up!
And I'll just throw them out there, just in case we talk about them too. Del Moore has an assistant, Kathleen Freeman as Millie Lemon, and then we have James Corbin as Harlan Hartley, who plays pretty heavily into the plot, even though he doesn't have like a really big part.
Del Moore reminds me a lot of your generic kind of dean. He feels like the guy that's going to shut down Animal House.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Double secret probation.
Yeah. And he's like, Kelp, how long have you been here? And it's like, 2.5 years and 46 seconds.
Yeah.
I love that he's so buttoned up because it does lend itself comedically to something that we'll discuss in just a few moments. But we don't get a ton of them. I mean, it's not like Del Moore is using a lot of range in most of his dealings here, but he's a very proficient at what he needs to do, which is come across as an authority figure. He's very believable as a doctor, as a professor, as it were. And he's got that stern, like, shape up or ship out thing. Larry Miller, though, this is a much more comedic take all around. And he plays very well with both authority and humor in a way that I don't think Del Moore gets the opportunity to play with as much. And we get Larry very early on with this. I alluded to it, but like the guinea pig versus the hamster scene, and he's very serious. And Klump, you got one more chance, but because he has this motivation of Klump, you scared away all of my donors. And there's not much money left. Like, his having to like kind of kiss ass for money is a fun little dynamic that elevates his character, in my opinion.
Yeah, he kind of has two roles that he's kind of playing. He's kind of sort of an antagonist to Professor Klump, and then he's sort of this sniveling ass kisser who will do anything for money, who's like so desperate to get money that he's pathetic and he's threatening at the same time. So it's a fun character for sure. I just like him in general. He's a fun actor. I thought he was great in Best in Show. I always enjoy watching him on the screen. And then you have the Dr. Mortimer. You know, like you said, he plays it straight, and that does pay off later. Should we get into this scene?
Yeah. Since we're talking about, because as we're kind of framing this out, like Larry Miller's character interacts kind of regularly with both Klump and Buddy Love in a way that we don't get in the original. So sometimes Buddy's at Wellman College. Nice play off of Spellman. Sometimes he's at Wellman College in the professor's office. Sometimes he's just talking to Klump. And there's a fun little dynamic that kind of happens in the original in the sense that they sort of have to be in the same place at once. And in the original film, basically, the prom, like what?
Yeah, it was like, this isn't high school, right? Or do they call proms that in college or something? I don't. Sure, it's called the prom, but we're not dating high school girls here, right? This is This is definitely college kids, especially the older varsity guys who got like fucking AARP cards. I mean, those guys look old as fuck.
Yeah, for real. But yeah, there's like a scene where Stella shows up kind of late for a meeting where they're putting together this kind of prom committee, and yeah, and Del Moore's character is just like going over, the music act, okay, the comedy act, great, Buddy Love, haven't heard of him. Who's that? And basically the whole punch here is that he has to meet Buddy Love first before he's cleared to perform at the prom, which gives our Professor Kelp a bit of a dilemma here where he has to produce Buddy Love, who no one else knows how to get a hold of. And the biggest nerd in school, apparently, who happens to be a professor, knows how to reach the coolest guy in town. All that just to pay off so that Buddy Love gets to meet Dr. Mortimer S. Warfield. And Warfield kind of starts with his like tough guy act, and Buddy Love just like breaks him down. He's like, "Hey, you ever think about acting?" "Oh yeah, and at a time." "Yeah, really?" Like,
look at this suit. Oh, I love that suit. The way it shapes your body. It looks so.
It's just off the rack. It's like, really, a guy like you, muscular guy like you, wear anything, huh? And he's like, he's just playing into this guy's sort of vanity. And by the end, he's got him on the desk. In a coat with a hat on, umbrella like a cane, and he's doing Hamlet.
Yeah.
And like, I just love that scene so much. Like he moves the light so it's on him, and to be but you gotta make me feel it.
Buddy keeps interrupting him because he's about to go. This guy is so excited to perform in front of Buddy, and he's like, no, it's not quite right yet. I really gotta feel it. So he keeps making these small little changes. He's like, no, it's gonna be beautiful. Oh, I'm gonna be moved. I can't believe what I'm about to see here. He's just
not like that. I need the real thing here.
Yeah,
it's really cool because like to this point, this character's authority has not been questioned at all.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had to point to any scene where I think Buddy Love shines at his best, I think it's this scene.
Yeah.
Like just the fast talking, they both really play off each other well in terms of the acting. And for as absurd of a scene as it is, because it ultimately ends with the Dr. Warfield on the desk, pants down, jacket on, floppy hat, like all this nonsense physical kind of comedy. And he's just there again with his pants down, like, to be, not to be. Is it to be? No, whatever the Hamlet line is.
Yeah, to be or not to be. You got it.
Yeah, and he's just like, he's so triumphant. He's got the umbrella. He's like, to be or not to be? That is the question. Before he realizes his pants are down.
He's not even that upset that his pants are down.
No, because, he's thinking about the old days. Like, maybe I could take another run at acting, And that's actually, again, it's not a major point, not even a big deal, but that's kind of a cool thing that, like, everyone has their dreams or something like that, and things change as you as you change, and Buddy Love, I guess, gives people a chance to, live that wild, crazy life that you really can't. Again, that's not really all there in the film, but like it's an interpretation you could take, and I thought it was honestly one of the strongest scenes in the film, and actually my favorite scene personally.
Yeah, I think that's the most memorable scene in the film for me, definitely. It just, again, we talk about playing against your expectations. You're led to believe that this Dr. Mortimer is just this hard ass who, like, nobody can please, and there's no way that he's going to allow Buddy Love, to perform at this prom. And then if you had been asked, like, do you think he's going to be standing without his pants on doing Hamlet by the end of the scene? You're like, what? So, it, just really plays into the charm that Buddy Love can really have just over a person, because not only does he get the doctor in this ridiculous situation, but it's actually pretty believable that he's able to get him there just through flattery. That like, you know what, this guy has a huge ego. You just stroke that, and then you can get him. He's going to be putty in your hands. So they really did that scene well. It was really enjoyable. Like I said, the most memorable scene in the movie for me. And just a great job by two actors that really nailed it.
And I mean, like, I'll put that up against a lot of scenes in films. Like, for instance, we watched like The In-Laws and stuff like that, and I think that's a movie that captures that type of humor consistently. But like, I mean, that it's one take right there, and those guys like pull that off like so well. So again, 1963 versus 96, it doesn't matter. That's just a good scene in my opinion. Yeah. We get some similar humor from this sort of this Miller Buddy Love reaction. Not quite necessarily the two actors playing off of themselves, more or less the situation. Because Sherman Klump is supposed to meet up at the Ritz or whatever to present to, as you mentioned, Harlan Hartley, played by James Coburn. He's supposed to present this, like, the idea, what Sherman's been working on, this whole technology that makes you into a Buddy Love type character. And of course, because Buddy Love's taking over, Sherman's not showing up. It's Buddy. And not only is Sherman not showing up, Buddy doesn't even care if Sherman gets fired. Because he's just trying to get laid. I mean, literally, he's just trying to get laid. But he has to deal with the inconvenience of presenting this plan. And it's another one of those fun scenes where Eddie comes in. Very similar to the Warrington scene that we didn't talk too much about, but like very similar to like turning everything on its head with expectations as well. He's like, look at this chick. She's fat, and this guy's fat. He's got a double chin.
Tank ass. Tank ass. I'm your brother. I'm your brother.
It's a fun scene. And like, he's basically pitching this idea that like you can change yourself on a molecular level. It's not the traditional way you do the Grant Pledge. But by then he's like, speaking of ass, look at this table of hot chicks right fucking here. Show them. He's spinning girls around, and he's you see them later on having a conversation amongst themselves. This table of three attractive women saying, he says he's enough man for all of us. And of course, his love interest overhears that. Obviously creates tension throughout the film, but like, I just like that Eddie's able to, like you mentioned, just take that scene on himself and just walk through this entire scene and say, this, mm-hmm. But I'm still going to sell you on the Grant. You're still going to make your money because, hey, Buddy Love has that charm. And it's a similar charm to what we see with Del Moore in that Hamlet scene. But I personally slightly prefer the Del Moore because we get to see a one-on-one acting experience. But this Eddie Murphy scene is very strong. And honestly, because the film is filled with with more strong moments, I'm kind of grading on a curve here. But this is a very strong scene for Eddie, too. I mean, it's pretty hilarious.
Yeah, it's definitely a good scene for Eddie. Again, it kind of plays against expectations. You don't think he's going to pull through because you think he's just thinking about getting laid the whole time. But he is able to sort of be brash and kind of bring that Buddy Love approach to things and still get the job done, like making it look so easy. But I think you just said it towards the end there. I think because we had seen Buddy Love do similar things, I think that scene his first introduction, like at the Scream, where he's just able to turn it around on Reggie on stage. I think that kind of takes away a little bit of just like the brilliance of him being able to do whatever he wants, because we know he can do that already because we saw it before. So it's a little bit more the same without being exactly the same. If that kind of makes sense. Yeah. So that's why I think the scene in the original film just has more impact, because we had never seen Buddy do anything that charming, like just the whole time, because he's 2 steps or 1 step forward, 2 steps back kind of a guy. I'll be charming, but then I'll be a huge dick. But that whole scene in the original film, it was just charm. I got exactly what I want. Okay, now I'm out of here. Yeah. So I think that's why you probably prefer the original one too, which is I think it's a stronger scene too.
I think so. It's just because it's directly related to, in a movie with like, honestly, 3 characters. In a movie with like 3 real characters, to have one of them sort of subvert the other, while also kind of giving you backstory on the other character, elevating him, showing you more about who he is, and both of those actors doing this flip in the scene. Like, it's a really cool scene, because like, again, it starts out, I'm Warfield, but then, oh yeah, I guess I have been working out. I guess, yeah, this is a nice suit. And to have that change, and it actually affects that character throughout the rest of the film, actually. It's a great scene.
Yeah, and like to that point too, because like in the remake, it's a bunch of new characters. Like this is the first time we're meeting Harlan Hartley, all the people that Eddie goes around to. Like we had never seen them before. The only person that we're familiar with really is Miss Purdy, who's not even there really, and then just Dean Richmond, and he's not really impressed. He's just kind of still being an ass kisser the whole time.
Yeah, because Dean Richmond at this point is like, oh my god, I can't believe this guy tank ass.
It's absurd. I assure you, he has no affiliation with this school. He's brilliant. It is absurd that he has no affiliation with this school. It's just that was a brilliant little turn he did right there.
So good. And yeah, and that's ultimately what's great about both these scenes, that it's a great scene. I just like, I have a slight preference for one, but again, in the context of really just the acting, I really enjoyed that they got to play like that in that time. This scene is more consequential for Eddie Murphy in the sense that like it sets up this sort of fall for Sherman. Buddy's gain, to your point earlier, is Sherman's loss. They're not working as a unit. In fact, by the end, they're both trying to kind of replace each other. It's like, hey, look, dude, you're not going to take my life, and vice versa. So it's still a very strong scene. I mean, look, who can complain about a wild party at Sherman's house afterwards with the threesome? I mean, like, this is great stuff.
I mean, the foursome, man.
Good point. Wow. Yeah, you're right. It is a foursome.
Yeah.
Buddy love, huh?
Yeah, I will just add one little thing to Dean Richmond too. I had mentioned it earlier. It's another thing that the remake does really well, is just add stakes. We had talked about how the buddy love persona is taking over, but he's also getting Sherman fired. His job is on the line. Excuse me. Yeah, Sherman's job is on the line. Like, for this grant proposal, it's like, if you don't do this, well, not even like his job, like his life is on the line. I will kill you. I will literally strangle you, cut off your air supply until you die, and then you'll be dead. So it's like, there's a lot at stake for Sherman here in the remake, just that the Dean does bring to it, because he's like, we need this money, and if we don't get it, you're out. And there's not really anything like that with Dr. Mortimer. There's no like, well, if Buddy doesn't perform at this prom, or if you don't show up to chaperone the prom, then you're out of here. His job is never at stake. His standing with the community is never at stake. Right. Him losing his identity is not even an issue. So, we're just building on all the conflicts that Sherman has to overcome in the remake, and I think those are a bunch of smart decisions that really just kind of make you root for Sherman more, because you don't really need to root for Dr. Kelp in the original, because there's no existential threat or anything.
No, I mean, ultimately too, like, does it really matter? I mean, if he's Kelp or if he's Buddy, I mean, doesn't really matter. I mean, Buddy could be nicer, but he's also yeah, he's obnoxious, you know. Okay, yeah. So what? Versus to your point in this remake versus yeah, Sherman. I mean, immediately after the scene, he's about to get evicted. He lost his job and has been replaced by Buddy. You know, the love interest hates him. You know, so Sherman had a lot to lose, and Buddy even at this point has made his turn based off what we're discussing right now as ultimately our villain in this film. Where in the original, Buddy Love's not the villain; he's just a result of your experiment. In the remake, Buddy, like, yeah, he wants your life, and he'll take it, and has no qualms about it. Completely different turn.
All right, so the families, let's talk about them very briefly, especially in the original, very briefly. We have Howard Morris as Mr. Elmer Kelp, Elvira Allman as Mrs. Edwina Kelp, and then in the remake, we have Eddie Murphy as everyone. Almost everyone. We do have Jamal Mixon as Ernie Klump Jr., Sherman's nephew. But Eddie's mom, dad, brother, grandma, all portrayed by Eddie. So I guess we'll just, since they are so brief, I think we should start with the original. And you had mentioned it before. We get a little flashback with a little baby Jerry Lewis just watching his parents interact, and you do see the power dynamic, that it is very much the mom in control and just how pathetic the dad is. And after that, we don't really get much of them until the very end.
Till the end.
Yeah, because we know he's going to send them the formula because he's afraid of losing it. And so it's a good thing he sent it to them because he did need it later. But he never really interacts with them until the very end, right?
Yeah, I mean, not really. I mean, we get this flashback, and really, I guess the only reason we get the flashback is because not everybody's a bodybuilder, you know, genetics and, you know, your genetic makeup. So they go all kind of Freud on us, and we go back to how everything started. And I guess any backstory in this film, I guess, is appreciated, but like, honestly, I could take it or leave it. I mean, it's pretty inconsequential, his family dynamic. We just get a better understanding of maybe why Kelp is the way that he is today. Like you mentioned, they're there for that flashback. They're there for the end. And honestly, at that point, the movie already ended. So getting them there was, I guess, like a little bonus. But their presence in many ways undermines the film. So I'm not really big on Kelp's family in this movie.
Yeah, I didn't really think they were that important. I mean, I guess you do see the flashback where you see that the mom has all the power, and just to turn that around, I guess, at the end, because you see that the father had actually taken the formula, so now he's talking like Dean Martin, and then the wife is the very submissive one in that relationship. So there's a little play with that, but, you know, like you said, it's so close towards the end. The payoff is very small to just seeing them do that. So,
yeah,
you know, you could take them or leave them, really.
Yeah. Especially considering, you know, we're not really talking about anything here, but especially considering that, like, that message is basically exact counter to the message we got, like, literally a scene earlier. It's quite literally the opposite thing of what we just thought was the resolution of the film. So, interesting strategy, Cotton. See, you know? But yeah, no, it's cool. I mean, in some ways, it's a pretty poor technical effect, but it's a technical effect that we see a young Dr. Kelp, and it certainly doesn't match the what we see in this remake when it comes to Eddie Murphy's family and the way this scene is shot. It's a pretty, even to this day, it's a pretty cool shot, scene, all that. And like Eddie Murphy's done that before. If you've ever seen Coming to America, he's been multiple characters in the same scene with heavy prosthetics. But this one, actually very strong multi-character playback between the same guy playing Cletus Klump and whatever Klump. And it's
been all night.
Don't tell him I'll cover your plate. Don't, not tonight, Cletus. I'll kick your ass.
Sherman.
a little fartsy with the humor, I think.
Yeah, it does get to some low lows when they just start farting, and they double down on that by doing that later when they bring Purdy over. But it's a very fun scene, and before I get into I guess just what happens, it's just like it still holds up today. Just having Eddie play all those characters. There's not a lot of scenes where you sort of see him sitting next to himself where they had to green screen it. There's a lot of just like him next to kind of a stand-in. So it was really well shot in that way. And then even the green screen scenes, like you can kind of see like a little bit of a green reflection on his skin. It's like, okay, so that one was a green screen and he's really there.
Yeah.
I mean, but it still
it
holds up
pretty good.
It holds up a lot better than the transformation effects. I'll say that.
Yes, yes. The transformation effects are they're clunky. I mean, Flubber would be a good kind of comparison point at that point. But like, no, like the dinner scene is a very technically shot scene, and like again, besides some of the lowbrow humor, there's actually some fairly, I wouldn't say highbrow, but there's some really like funny, punchy lines in there before they go down the fart lane. But even like afterwards, after the film, kind of seeing some of the bloopers and how they shot some of those scenes, like you mentioned with the stand-in and stuff like that, I was like, wow, that was really, really clean, like smart filmmaking there, and I appreciate it. I mean, it's similar to Kelp's family, where like, okay, whatever, like Kelp's dad is a pushover, and that's why Kelp's a pushover. Eddie Murphy's family likes to eat, and that's why Eddie Murphy's big. Like there's not much there, but because they're able to do all the prosthetic work is spot on. Eddie's character work is spot on. Where like, if you didn't know that it's him in every scene, like if you had no context of that, someone could watch that film and be like, wow, who are all these actors? And it's it's the same guy.
Yeah, I mean it's really impressive because sorry, my dog. It's really impressive because the flows of the conversations just seem so natural, and you forget that he's doing all the lines,
Right.
He's kind of reacting to what he's gonna say or already said. So it's really impressive in that aspect.
Yeah.
I'm sure like maybe the stand-in's reciting one of his lines, but it's still like all Eddie at the end of the day. And you can't help but just be like impressed that still holds up like 24 years later. Just really well done. And like I know some of the comedy is a little stupid, but some of it's a little funny too. Like my favorite is the grandma Klump. I just think it's the funniest. Mike Douglas used to make her moist. The only white man who could make her moist. I mean, it's absurd. It's ridiculous.
I won't repeat it because weirdly really a couple of N-bombs in this movie that I don't think, like, one, they're not necessary at all, so I don't know why I even kind of mess with your rating a little bit. But when when he has Reggie play the piano at the end, it's like it's like an N-bomb Achi, like a Liberace line. I was like, that's fucking funny. I don't care who you are. Again, I'm not going to repeat it here, but like I was like, that's a funny joke right now. But yeah, you're right. Like some of the references that he makes, it's a great scene. I think honestly, it's the scene that gets them the remake.
Yeah.
I mean, not the remake.
The sequel.
It's the scene that gets them the sequel.
Yeah.
So look, the Klumps were a thing. I'm, again, being like 8 at the time. I know you're a little bit older, but like going to school and hearing people talk about the Nutty Professor and the Hercules, like that. I've heard that line 1,000 times. It's just a very, very cool scene. I think honestly, the only scene that Eddie Murphy does like that I may like a little bit more is the Coming to America scene in the barbershop. But like, it's so well done.
Yeah. I mean, it's not really necessary to drive forward the plot, but
nope.
You know what? It's fun and well done. So at that point, you just go along for the ride because it is an enjoyable ride.
Yeah, and the first one felt better than the second one. I mean, the second dinner scene still has its highs, but like that first scene, just like he's firing when it's really literally just him and that one random kid playing the nephew. But like, when it's all him, it works. Which again, Jada Pinkett, I think if they would have given her a little bit more to do in that scene, it could have elevated it. But like, she's really just kind of reacting.
Yeah.
And again, when you look at the bloopers, she's like, "Yo, you got Eddie over here," because clearly he is ad-libbing here because no one could write this stuff for that guy. He's just too smart. He's too brilliant.
Yeah, just to sell it the way he does. No, but I get what you're saying about the second dinner scene. It does feel like a little bit more the same, especially since they do bring the fart jokes back. It's like, did we need the fart jokes again? Like, just give me the grandma talking about relations. Because, relations is a beautiful thing. Sometimes I relate to myself. It's like, come on, grandma talking about masturbation at the dinner table. I'll take that. Yeah, give me more of that and less of the fart stuff.
I think honestly, if they tried to do this again, which I'm not saying they should, if they tried to do this again, I think less farting would be good. Honestly, like today, like is the fat tube prosthetics isn't necessary, not really, but like whatever, it is what it is. But this to me is some of the strongest comedy in this film, and again, is it consequential? Does it change anything? Does it elevate or add anything? No, but it's a lot of fun.
So, just a little side note, I was looking up some facts on IMDb, and Jerry Lee Lewis, I keep saying it, and Jerry Lewis, who was a producer in this movie, was actually going to be in the film, but opted out after he saw there was too much farting. Too many fart jokes. So those fart jokes, they didn't play with us. They didn't play well with us. And then we also lost a little cameo of the original professor there. So look what fart jokes do.
Well, he wasn't wrong. There were too many fart jokes.
I mean, I still like the when he's having that dream sequence. That was a funny fart joke. And then the nuclear bomb. Okay. I'll take that one.
The nuclear fart. All right, I'll give you that.
Yeah, you don't see nuclear fart all the time. All right, let's get to him because we had talked about him, and come on, Dave Chappelle is Reggie Warrington. We gotta go here.
Silence! I can't take this shit no more. Now, you done talked about me enough, boy. I try to be peaceful, but now it's time for Reggie to karate-size your ass. Woo! Oh yeah. Oh.
I don't even know where to start with this. I'll say this: I've never before or since seen Chappelle that animated being a character, just like all the little moves he does.
Now, part of that I think is him kind of, as they say over in the UK, taking the piss out of a very particular time in stand-up. As you know, I am a stand-up named Reggie as well. I 100% get the references because he's talking specifically about Def Jam style comedy. There was this weird time in like the 90s where like Def Jam just was running the comedy game, and like they had their HBO show and you would showcase all these different acts, and in retrospect there were some high highs and there were some low lows because there were some hacks running around, and I think his character is a send up to that. Like his pants are sagging. You can see his like yellow underwear. He's got the big goofy like Dr. Seuss hat kind of going on. He's just so animated. Like the Women Be Shopping is literally him making fun of comedians with bad premises. But like he's such a good comic that he's selling it. They do be shopping, and that is a style of comedy at the time, of just like a lot of Def Jam comics did this, which is just like pointing at something somebody's wearing or doing and making fun of it. So it's like the first girl comes up, he's like, "Oh, she's unbelievable," like that.
Look at this. What is a weave exactly?
What is?
He sells it so well.
Like I definitely have a small penis. It's such a fun character, and then like the relentlessness of which he goes after Eddie Murphy, Sherman Klump is just brutal. I mean, it's joke after joke. Is like, oh, I bet he has to use a boomerang to put his belt on.
Just
we got a full moon tonight. It's like the funniest, meanest thing.
Yeah. I mean, it does the job beautifully. It sets him up as this villain that's like oddly funny and entertaining. I mean, because that's what he is. Like to some people, he's the funniest guy, and then to other people, like the people who he's humiliating, he's gonna seem like the biggest villain. So I think the movie's able to really show both aspects of that really well, and Dave Chappelle is able to sell it.
So good. I think that again, I don't know if this is exactly what they're going for, but like that dynamic of no one else sees Sherman the way that he sees himself. So like in this moment, obviously we just made fun of that lady because of her hair. We made fun of that guy because he's white. Like yes, he's leaning in, he's doing more towards Sherman, but like the impact, because if you didn't have them zoom into Sherman, see Eddie's face, hear the sad music, he's just still ripping it, and we'll probably still be laughing, but like he felt it. And I think anyone that's ever felt, which I guess is probably everybody who's felt sort of out of place, bullied or anything like that, in that moment, you could see like the psychological impact on that. And for a movie that, again, can go as low as a nuclear fart, to be able to kind of thread the needle in this scene is actually pretty impressive.
And then just to, have that be like the first moment of triumph sort of for Buddy Love, and just the dynamic that Buddy Love and Reggie Warrington have on stage. I want to talk a little bit about Eddie first, because I remember when I saw this, like just his laughing, his nonsensical laughing, he had to give himself the Heimlich.
Yeah, he spits out
he's like, "You want to wait for the punchline, brother?" I mean, I don't know how Eddie was able to just laugh. It's insane just how much he was laughing.
It's crazy. And I think that, again, because we did talk about Jada Pinkett a little bit. And again, I know her as a very strong actress, but, I don't think she could have held up against this guy. He was just on fire in this movie. Like you said, the Heimlich, the spitting the thing out. I'm like, yo, it's not that funny. But, and then just again, it's very reminiscent of Jerry Lewis going in and saying, all right, why don't you take a break? I'll tickle the keys for a minute. It's similar to that, where he gets up and he just starts dishing it out. It's like Reggie's mom and Mr. Ed,
Yeah. Yeah, I was watching that, and then he goes into it. He's like, because people can picture your mom and Mr. Ed just go, yeah. And then I'm watching that, and Sam's like, oh my God, this is PG-13? Like, how can he say that? I'm like, that was the 90s.
Yeah.
That's the shit you said back then.
Absolutely. It's just such it is a really powerful scene. Again, besides the sort of the dinner table exploits, as it were, I found those moments, the Reggie Warrington intro, the Reggie Warrington takedown, to be again, some of our best interactions with Buddy Love here. And this is the last time you're going to like Buddy Love in this movie. So enjoy it while you can.
Oh, yeah, it was great. Yeah, because there's going back and forth. Your mom is so fat jokes, and then it just comes down to a physical brawl. He's about to karate your ass. I mean, it's so fucking good. And then he's got that fucking terrible the hair underneath there. He's like, I heard of dreadlocks, but shitlocks?
Shitlocks.
You take the comedy too far. Get that shit off your head.
You may remember, I forget what song they sing, but to have him do the high note.
Yeah, the Loving You is because
oh yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah, it is that song. Fun. I mean, this is just, again, a very, very strong scene. Mm-hmm. This to me truly feels like the intro to Buddy Love in this film.
Right.
And is the most sort of reminiscent to the original in terms of Buddy Love in a crowd of people being loved by everybody, although on the outside it looks great, but for the main love interest, this kind of sucks. Well, at this point, no, not even. No, this is still good.
Yeah.
He was just kind of late.
Yeah, last time he was there, everybody was laughing at him, and then he had this comic that was this villain, and this time he was able to humiliate the comic, physically assault him, and not get arrested for it somehow, and having everybody in the room cheer him. It's the exact opposite of what happened the last time he was there. So everything, like I said before, just a net positive because of this Buddy Love character that he came up with, and yeah, you're on that character's side because the crowd's cheering, you're cheering for him too. You hated what Reggie Warrington did to him, and you just love to see him get his comeuppance like that.
Yep. Until he literally tries to kill off Sherman. That's
yeah, up till that point. But at this point, you're just like, yeah, go, buddy, go. Good job, man. Good job.
Yeah, I think I do see you had one other character here.
That's John Ailes as Jason. I just wanted to mention him because he's sort of the confidant to Sherman. He's the only one who knows that Sherman is Buddy Love.
Right.
You don't have a character like that in the original film that knows that he's both. And I thought that was an interesting character to introduce.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting character to introduce. I mean, he is reduced by the fact that he spends most of his time being just knocked out randomly. But yeah, he does research with Sherman. He understands the danger because Sherman's clouded. His judgment is clouded. And in the original film, that's not too bad because, being Buddy Love is still a temporary thing the entire time. In this remake, we learn that Buddy Love is trying to become a permanent fixture, and Sherman being sort of the disappearing act here. Jason doesn't want that to happen. He sees this way too much testosterone. Again, I was talking to my wife. I was like, I guess the villain is toxic masculinity in this movie. And he tries to protect his buddy. He puts a lot of things in the context. For a minor character, I think he is actually a really strong character. And especially towards the end of the movie, I think he does a lot of important work to move the plot along and get us to our ultimate resolution. So a worthy addition in terms of people to actually talk about.
Yeah. And again, we talked about like Sherman just like being a little more well-adjusted than Professor Klump was. Like this guy is like, he's an ally. He's a buddy.
Sure.
He's there for Sherman. He's looking out for Sherman's best interest. Even like when he discovers that Buddy Love is Professor Sherman, like he sees the credit card. He's like, that guy's not Professor Sherman. Like he's looking out for him like from the beginning. Mm-hmm. Just lets you know that people care about Sherman, and that's important because he can be a little bit hard on himself just because of the weight issue, and it's good that he has people like that in his life. Yeah,
that's we said it before, but that is a key distinction between the original and the remake. The original, I don't know who cares about Kelp. Honestly, I don't think anybody cares about Kelp. Even his own parents don't really care about Kelp. But you're right. In this remake, again, it brings me back to it. I think that Sherman's own self-esteem and perception is more him. Yes, there are people that are going to be sort of prejudice. I don't know what the word is there, but there's people that are going to prejudge him because of his size and stuff like that. But overall, he's got a pretty good support system here between family. I mean, he's able to go on dates, and Jason here looking out for him in case some guy steals his credit card. I mean, maybe being Sherman's not that bad, huh? Maybe that's the lesson here.
Is that the lesson? Be yourself. we do know he's never been with a woman though, because the grandma does say 35 years built up.
Built up, your whole head might pop off. That line is nuts.
I mean, it's fun. It's fun.
That's a fun line, man.
All right, I mean, those are really all the characters I thought were important enough to talk about. Or any characters you want to get into before we get into the ending?
Remembering these two films, I can't see how there would be. Pretty limited here.
All right, so let's talk about the endings a little bit. We had already kind of alluded to this, the message about being yourself at the end of the day. So I'm actually going to start with the remake here, because that's definitely the overall theme. Like we said, Buddy Love's kind of a jerk, and he is going to take over Sherman's body, and there won't be the Sherman Klump identity or consciousness in the body anymore. So we're brought to this fundraising gala, which is also supposed to prove to Harlan Hartley that to give the $10 million to the school. So Sherman is determined to finally let the cat out of the bag that it's him, but Buddy does end up tricking him by replacing one of his Slim Fast shakes with what is it called? Slim Fast, or is it?
It was a Luke Perkins shake. I don't know exactly.
Okay, so one of the Luke Perkins shakes, he just replaces it with let's call it the Buddy Love formula. And so Buddy is able to get to this gala, and Sherman invited everybody. He invited his parents too. So they're all there, and then there's this weird kind of battle going on, and this is where the CGI doesn't really age well, because you do see him just blowing up to becoming Sherman size and then reverting back to kind of Eddie's size. Jason does show up a little bit to kind of delay him from drinking the formula, but ultimately the battle of Sherman is won by Sherman, and he's able to get rid of that Buddy Love persona and get the money and get the girl. So It's win, 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 and you just gotta be yourself. And even Harlan Hartley's like, I gave you the money because he's such a charming gentleman. Oh, wasn't that nice of you to give $10 million because somebody's a gentleman? I mean, damn.
Yeah.
I mean, you want your happy ending. Everything's resolved in a very nice and neat package. And, the message of be yourself obviously plays well here.
Yeah, and I think what strengthens that message in this remake is that Sherman has come to that conclusion on his own too, even before these events happen. He said, "Look, we tried the Buddy Love thing. He saw what it did to him. He recognized that it got out of control, and I'm dumping this Buddy Love juice out. I don't need this anymore. I'm gonna be me." Buddy has to trick him to even come back. So that's again reinforcing that this Sherman has learned his lesson. He mentioned it in his little speech. He was a little bit selfish. Yeah, he was. But you can understand after that thrashing from Reggie Warrington. So, ultimately, the guy is a gentleman, and that's a good thing, and it's a good lesson. I don't know what the film's saying about size, because nobody's actually fat in the movie. Everyone's wearing a fat suit and farting and stuff like that. So I don't know. Maybe we're helping people, but at least the message is right. Totally, the message is right. The original, I can't say the same thing. Just can't say it. I guess I'll do this ending.
Sure.
So in the original, we get to college prom, and
college prom,
and you see this music act that was. Whatever, comedy act I think was there, whatever. And then it's Buddy Love's turn to sing that song. He sang 2 times already in the film, one last time, because it's a kick in the head.
Because that's what the Rat Pack does. They got to sing their song at least 3 times.
It's Black Magic. Hey, I was too drunk to sing it tonight. And, same kind of bit. He's getting up there, and the voice starts to go. And ultimately, in the middle of his song, he's not able to sing it. No matter how much he tries, and then he reverts back to being Dr. Kelp, and he gives his basically very similar speech to what we see in the remake, which is explaining how he became Buddy Love, the whole origins, and he's kind of as he has been, he's kind of this little pathetic guy who's I guess it's just best to be yourself, and cool, got it. You try being Buddy Love, you try being yourself, and in this scene, you see something similar in the remake as well. But as he kind of walks off, sort of defeated and sorry guys, the love interest comes up and she's like, hey, by the way, that Buddy Love guy, it wasn't really for me. He's a little too wild. Being a professor's wife though, that would be cool. And they make out, and it's awkward because that's his student. In fact, they follow that up with a scene of her still being his student in the front row, kind of with the starry eyes and everything like that. And it's that's all, folks, but it's not. It's not all, folks, because for some reason, the dad comes barging through the classroom as the professor. Now he's got braces. Presumably maybe one day he'll get contacts. So, Kelp, though he learned to be himself, his love interest is making sure that he fits the bill a little bit more.
He's got a little gel in his hair.
Yep. Yeah. So he's going to be himself, but he's going to be a lot like Buddy, just as himself. And his dad comes in and he's like, "Hey, Daddy O, snapping and oh, here, yeah, what do you say? Here's my square bookworm son being a square bookworm over here. He's dressing down his wife in public and just like, hey, shut your yap and stand over here." And it's quite a turn. You're like, why is his dad acting like that? Turns out he's selling snake oil. He's selling the old kelp cool tonic. And after Kelp just gave this lesson of, hey guys, it's better just be yourself. I learned that lesson. You should too. What does everyone do? They go rushing up the front to get their hands on Kelp Cool Tonic so they can be a dick to their wife as well. And you're like, Kelp is like, should I stop them? Should I do something here? And Stella's like, no, let's just get out of here. You got the license to the Cool Tonic or something like that. We're going to just leave and we're going to be on our way. And, winking a nod to the camera, she's got some Cool Tonic in her back pocket. Because,
Because be yourself, right?
yeah, Kelp's okay, but that Buddy Love guy, that's a cool character. We gotta go see what would have happened at the top and make out point, So, yeah, it's a movie about being yourself that ultimately is not about that at all. It's about being cool, and that's what America was really built on, Dan. Fuck
cool.
all this being yourself stuff. I mean, why we wear Levi's jeans and hair product? Because we got to be cool, man.
Gotta be cool.
So.
It's very important. Yeah, a very mixed message towards the end of the movie. Not only was the dad there with the formula, but the doctor, the other dean, he was there too, also taking the formula.
Oh yeah, that's right. He comes in with a cigarette.
Yeah. So he's coming in with the swagger too. So it's like everybody knows all about this formula.
It's gas, man.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like, I guess at the end of the day, it's a comedy. It's the only thing I could think of. It's like kind of like how Ocean's 11 kind of played with your expectations. Like, oh, here's these cool guys, but they're not going to get the money because they're actually idiots. So it's kind of like, well, instead of having a nice, well, that's the lesson of today. It's cool to be cool, man. Come on.
Yeah.
Let's just be cool. So that's the best I could think of, that they just didn't want to go for that kind of sappy, let's learn the lesson. Let's have him learn the lesson, which is probably what typically would have happened back then.
Yeah.
But it's confusing as hell to watch today. I'll tell you that.
It's confusing. I think it's very similar to the arm thing. It's just another gag that they can get out. Again, we talked about the Dr. Warfield earlier and kind of him going from this kind of stodgy, uptight guy to, his dreams of the big stage in Hamlet to now, at the end, he's like, it's a real gasser, again, kind of, I don't know, we've talked about beatniks before or something like that, making fun of a archetype of that era. You wouldn't expect the dean to be into jazz and cigarettes. So, weird, but, kind of funny, but also if there was a point, it was lost right there when they added this extra little gag scene.
Yeah, just not a strong ending. I don't know what else to say.
No.
Even the gags were just a little flat. So it really could have just ended as soon as Purdy was like, all right, I just want to be with you. I want to be a professor's wife. Like she can't do anything in her own life to raise her status. She has to be a professor's wife. But I do want to go back a little bit because earlier the college prom, I think he was asking her about buddy love and so what is it exactly you find attractive about him? Is it his looks? Well, not exactly his looks. Well, is it the way he talks? Well, not exactly the way he talks. He can talk like a jerk. So you were kind of getting this idea that okay, so she really isn't exactly attracted to this kind of suave guy.
Sure.
But again, because we had that ending where she's walking away with a couple bottles, was there any meaning to that? Was she just talking? It seems like you do very much care, especially since, like you said, he's wearing braces and has gel in his hair now. It's like, is she gonna get him a spray tan soon, or get him that fake mole that he has on?
Yeah. It's just it completely undermines the entire last 10 to 15 minutes of the movie. It's just all right, we've progressed. He's realizing that maybe she's not that into buddy love, and maybe there is a space for you know, the kelp here. And no, I guess not. Unless it's like one of those things where like, yeah, that other ending's not canon. That's just like a fun aside that we threw in for shits and gigs. But like, I really can't interpret it that way because, it's a continuation of the same film. So,
yeah, you can't say something that happens in the same film is not canon. It's a hard sell.
Very true. Very true. So,
unless it happened after the credits, but no, it happened right after.
Right. Because it said that's not all. This is more of this story.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, it was a weird choice. A choice I don't really like, but also, again, there's some high highs in the film. There's not many of them, and again, 1963. I'm sure this is awesome. Jerry Lewis is still good. Delmore is, as always, he's good. Stella is, she's a one-note character. It's a very simple, straightforward story, but in a time where this is one of the first big kind of movie reveals. This is like a secret thing. It's like going to watch Clue in 4 different like endings depending on what theater you went to. It's kind of like that, So nice little piece of movie history, an enduring character because it's canonized or lionized in The Simpsons. I think we all can do a Nutty Professor. So that's fun. But 1993. I don't know. They just did more with it. I think they had more places to go, and I think they stuck to their message. Even if could you say is that really the message of the film? Maybe, maybe not. But at least they stuck with it.
All right. I mean, it sounds like we're coming close to the end here. Is there anything else you wanted to discuss before we get to our verdicts?
No, not particularly.
Okay. I just wanted to briefly talk about the music a little bit in the remake. You had brought up Montel already, and then we have a lot of montages in the remake.
True.
So I just wanted to address that because we don't need all those montages, especially since they're pretty like cliche. It's like I'm so excited, I feel good. It's not necessarily songs we haven't heard before, 2 montages.
Sure.
So, other than Montel, I think the music is okay in the remake.
Right.
Because they're using songs that we've heard so many times before.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, if you were asking me, like, grab bag of montages, like, yeah, this song's probably going to be used plenty. It just gets the message across pretty quickly. Music is a minor factor, I think, in the film. I guess it's good that it's there, but ultimately, like, really just the Montel cameo it's the best because it puts sort of that time capsule feel on this movie, which is like, oh yeah, Montel it would have been really cool to see Montel performing in '96, like at a concert, not even a concert, like at a like local lounge, like that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, it elevates the Reggie Warrington character actually.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because
if he can perform alongside with Montel, then he must be.
Yeah.
Must have some clout as a comic, not just some schmuck off the streets or anything like that.
Right.
I do want to just talk about one other song. There's that song, "Strokin'," when he's driving the car as Buddy Love. I'll be stroking.
Oh yeah,
so that's
Clarence Carter.
That song is just ridiculous. I just want to bring that up because my wife hates that song, and I love blasting that just to annoy her. So this is the first movie I ever heard that song in. So that's why I play it, just to annoy my wife. I just wanted everybody to know that I can be a dick sometimes and blast that song.
Yeah, Clarence Carter stroking. I think I want to say the comedian Robin Harris used that song at some point in some bit that he did. So like I'm familiar with the song. It's been like remixed and used in like different stuff, but like it's a great song and like obviously conceptually for a guy who for 35 years hasn't had relations, as soon as he gets skinny, he's like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be stroking.
He's got the PNS car. He can see his dick. There's a lot of vulgar stuff for this PG-13 movie, man.
Yeah. Fun, though. It was fun.
All right. We're here. All right. Reggie, should the remake of The Nutty Professor exist?
Yeah, taking sort of my 2020 cap off and recognizing like how big a deal this was in '96, and the fact that that overall this film holds up again outside of some kind of crappy CGI. Just Eddie Murphy's character work was worth seeing. What they do with the prosthetics and stuff like that was worth seeing, and I think they took a plot and actually like added a little bit more to it because like the original is much more straightforward than this film. Not that the Nutty Professor remake is extremely hard to follow. It's actually very easy to follow. But no, Eddie Murphy just he just delivers one of those performances where it doesn't really matter what the subject matter is, does it when you pull out that star power like that. So it's not something that I'm gonna watch frequently or maybe not even ever again, but it should exist because it's a great performance. I 100% remember the cultural impact of it. It did matter at the time, still matters today, and good one on Eddie. It should exist. It's not like my favorite, but it's a pretty good movie.
With regards to the remake, it's I remember when it came out, I really liked it a lot, and some of those jokes didn't age as well, but I think kind of like what you said though, it did add some elements that the original didn't have. I had talked about this already. The conflict, it just introduced like all that conflict, like why we don't want Buddy Love to succeed, right? Because he's gonna lose his job, he's gonna just lose his identity, and just he's not gonna get anything really. So introducing that conflict definitely made the story just more compelling, and it made more sense in the direction that it went. And yeah, the original doesn't really have a direction because it just be Buddy. I mean, do we even need Kelp? Nobody seems to be missing him. So at the end of the day, I do think that this remake should exist just because they were able to add that conflict, and I think the transformation, skinny guy to fat, or fat guy to skinny guy, I think it's just a little bit easier to portray than like a dorky guy to a cool guy.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how well that translates to today. I mean, obesity and weight is still a big issue today. There's like tons of like weight loss products like still out there on the market, so it's still like a problem going forward. Like I said, like Klump by today's standards is not that fat because obesity is just so bad. But it's I think it's just easier to follow just to see like a big guy and then a skinny guy. Okay, two different guys, got it. As opposed to like he's kind of like being too dorky, and is that really a cool guy? I don't know. And just like just Eddie's at the top of his game here. Just doing all those characters. He really nails it here. Jerry's great too. Like I said, I really thought just that going back and forth between Buddy Love and Kelp, like just having his voice fluctuate, because he really does have to rely on his performance for you to buy that he is two different people at that point, as opposed to Eddie having the CGI doing a lot of the heavy lifting there. But yeah, I think everything just works a little bit better in the remake. I think the jokes will land a lot better, and it's I don't know, it's just an enjoyable movie. And then you sprinkle in a little bit of Dave Chappelle. I mean, how could you go wrong, right?
Yeah. I mean, that could be one of the most influential like side characters in the film. Like his screen time is literally nothing. It's if there's 2 minutes of screen time with this guy, but like I trust me, I still hear people say women be shopping. So I mean, the guy nailed it. Yeah, just fun movie. Again, time hasn't been as kind to it in some places, but like it holds up well enough. Actually, both films really do holds up well enough that I can recommend that.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's what we thought about the Nutty Professor. Did we miss anything? Did you guys agree with us? Did you disagree with us? Definitely let us know. Right now, we got to figure out what we're doing for the next episode. So, I picked this one. Do you want to pick the next one?
So, yeah, we just watched a movie with a comedic take on like a smooth guy. Maybe we should try a classic cool character in 007.
Oh.
And I'm thinking maybe Casino Royale.
All right. A little bit of Bond action. That'll change things up for sure. All right.
Absolutely.
Let's do some Casino Royale. So that's what we're doing for our next episode. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Like I said, let us know what you guys thought. If you agree with us, disagree with us, definitely let us know. You can reach out to us on any of the social medias at Retro versus Remake, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Reggie?
Yep. Reggie Parker. You can check me out on at RP Comedy on Twitter and Instagram. As always, thanks for listening. These have been a lot of fun putting together. I don't know. I'm really starting to feel like we got a groove with some of these movies. There's been some really good ones lately. So
yeah,
let's keep that energy going.
Keep it going strong. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. This has been another episode of Retro versus Remake.